everyone, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you a tutorial on how to make this Benchfold barbecue card. I think it's perfect for Father's Day, for a brother, a grandfather, anybody who really loves to barbecue. Even just as a summer card, this is great. It's got all the little accessories on top of the grill there, and I just think it's so cute. I did make this card using my Cricut, and I will will provide all of the instructions on how to make it, as well as all the measurements. In order to make this card, we're first going to start off with some clear embossing ink. I've just got this one here with the little dauber on top. I like the way this one works. Easy enough. And plain old glue stick, plain old scissors. Also need some clear embossing powder. You definitely don't need this. This and the embossing ink are just definitely extras. Some basic liquid glue. I just got this clear gel one from Dollar Tree. I've got some tweezers for picking up those little items. Just makes it a little bit easier. Some 24 gauge wire. This is for making some of the kebabs to hold the vegetables on the grill. Got wire cutters to cut the wire. I've also got some double-sided tape just for sticking most of the elements down, or sticking some of the back elements down. Pencil for making marks. I've got these little daubers that I'm going to use actually to add the embossing ink. I don't have a stamp that I'm using for the embossing ink, and this is actually just to add a little bit of glitter and shimmer to the clouds. Next, this is the back for the Benchfold card. It's the same as the U-fold card. I have a YouTube video up, or that will be going up, to show you all of the measurements on how to make this in your Cricut design space, or just on your own without the Cricut design space. This is the third element of the Benchfold card. That's what holds up the bench, essentially. And I've got a big box here with all of my other little bits and baubles. I've got some tin foil and the rest of the little pieces for all of the little elements for the card. And let's get started. Get all of this out of my way, and I'm going to start with the base here. So as you can see, I'm just going to go over these score lines to make sure the folds are really nice and crisp, because the card is going to essentially be popping open when it opens up. I want to make sure that the lines are really set in there. So I'm just going to start organizing these pieces, and these are going to be for the front and top of my barbecue grill. And I'm just getting all of the pieces that I need. I'm working on creating some files, or Cricut design files, SVG files for downloads for these cards. They are a work in progress. I just want to make sure that everything is absolutely perfect before I send it out. This was the second or third run of this card, and it's just about there, but there's a few pieces, as you'll see a little bit later on, that just don't exactly match up with where I want them to, and I want the SVG file to be absolutely perfect before I start either selling it or giving it out to people. So I've got all these little barbecue pieces here, and I've done these in 2 tones of gray just to add a little bit of contrast, etc. So I'm just going to start gluing together. This is the grill top. So I've got the base here. I didn't want it just see-through because I made that piece in blue you'll see that I'm going to attach it to, and I didn't want the bottom of the barbecue to look through into blue. I could have done this whole piece here instead of in blue in a gray. However, as you'll see, the way it's going to be attaching to the rest of the card, I wanted to have that look like sky still. So I actually got that piece wrong. This is the bottom piece. And I'm just double checking that I've got the pieces right. See, as you can see, there is a little bit of a gap at the back of that blue piece. So it's just stuff like that, the little tiny measurements that I'm organizing up in Cricut Design Space that I want to get absolutely perfect and all fixed before I start giving out the pattern. And I'm going to glue the grill on top. That's one thing I absolutely love about my Cricut, is that I can get these perfectly precise little lines. There's no way I'd ever be able to do this perfect grid just by cutting it by hand. There's no way. So I absolutely love the Cricut for these, and the squares are nice and small. Everything is perfectly measured. It's all straight. It's just awesome. There is the little gap that I was telling you about there. So I'm actually going to go ahead and just cut that piece off, because I think that's just excess, or where I've glued down the thing just a little bit too far. And I'm going to recrease that fold there, just to make sure that's good, because once it's on the card, it's kind of a little bit more difficult to do that. So I'm going to line up the bottom of the barbecue. It's a little bit hard to see right now, but the grill is what's going to fold down, and the bottom piece that I just had on there is what's going to sit in the front. So it's essentially the front of the barbecue. And this is the lid, and for whatever reason, I could not figure out how to get this outline on there. Outline is totally not necessary, but it just adds a little bit more dimension in my opinion, and there we go. I figured it out. But see, this is another one where, for whatever reason, the edge, either when it cut or when I designed it in Design Space, it doesn't match up exactly. So it's a little bit more confusing, and there's just a few little cuts that I had to make with my scissors in order to get this match up properly. But nobody can be perfect. So we're going to glue on this front piece of the barbecue here and continue on with building out the barbecue portion of this card. And I just like using a glue stick. I know a lot of people use those like double-sided tape, and I do have double-sided tape, and for some items I do use it, but when I'm building something like this, I really like to be able to use the glue stick. And I'm trying to show you here, when you fold it, there is going to be a little gap of where the blue is. Again, this could be avoided by using a gray piece of paper. However, I wanted the sides on either side of the barbecue to be blue, and for me, it just made more sense to have it as blue. And I don't mind that little gap there. Nobody's going to notice it. There's so much going on this card. Nobody's going to notice that little sliver of blue when you fold down the barbecue top. Just adding the arms. Are those arms? I'm not sure. Just adding the arms onto the barbecue here. And that kind of actually also helped to disguise where this joins up on the card backing. It helps that they're the same color, but since we've also got an element there, it just makes that cut a little bit more disguised. So I've got the doors of the barbecue. Again, I could have done these the same color, and I did go back and forth about whether I should do these as the same color gray. Ultimately, I did decide that I wanted to do them just darker, just to add a little bit more interest to it. And I'm gonna sort of half stick that one on. Another thing I do like about the glue stick, when I'm trying to get two elements like this centered and placed properly, again, I'm not super concerned about it being absolutely perfect, but pretty darn close is kind of nice. So having the glue stick there lets me just kind of partially stick it down and get the placement where I want it to be. There we go. So we've got the doors on the front of the barbecue, and I placed those down a little bit further. Then I didn't want to line them right up at the top because I want to add the buttons. What do you call that? Like the dials above that. So I'm going to add some handles onto the doors. And I just did these again in another color, black. Thought it would be nice to kind of have them stand out. Glue those on again, just with a glue stick. And yeah, stuff like this, like there's no way I have the patience to use a double-sided tape to stick them down. Apparently I don't have enough glue on that one. It's slipping away. And I mean, kind of when I'm doing cards like this, there's so many little pieces, even though like most of the pieces so far, other than these handles, I could have used a double-sided tape on. It would just be so tedious, and it'd be so much double-sided tape. So when I've got these elements, I do like to use the glue stick. And I keep going back to that, but everybody always asks why I'm using a glue stick instead of double-sided tape. And I don't know, maybe I'm just lazy. I'm gonna glue these dials on now. Just 4 little circles. Again, love the Cricut for this. You could definitely actually just use like a hole punch, and you probably will get relatively similarly sized circles. Since I was already cutting everything out on the Cricut already, adding 4 little circles was not a big deal to me. So I did just add those in the Cricut. But again, all of this could definitely be cut out by hand and done. But I have the Cricut, so I'm going to use it. Next, I've got some little accents for the arms here, just to make it look, I don't know, a little bit more 3D. Not a necessary piece at all. And yeah, this part is a little bit, I don't know, maybe it's boring to watch. I hope it's not boring to watch, but yeah, just basically assembling. Normally I kind of speed these up a lot more, but and I have trouble like talking over them, so this video will be a little bit longer, but it's pretty intricate in my opinion, so it's kind of nice to just see how everything is assembled and where it's stuck down and all that kind of stuff. Got some little glue bits or flops or something, get those out of the way. There we go. So as you can see, we now have a barbecue with a grill top, and that will sit perfectly in our little card there and it looks so, so nice. So now I'm going to start assembling the lid, and this is a little bit painful to watch, so I will warn you now. I had these insert pieces that, in hindsight, I should have actually glued onto the black outline first and then glued onto the lightest gray. But of course, I went and glued them onto the lightest gray without knowing that there's those little pieces that don't quite match up perfectly. So there's a lot more finessing and moving around that needed to be done, whereas I could have just glued it onto the black first and then glued those two pieces onto the gray. So if you are making this card, keep that in mind because my mistake is your gain, I guess. Hindsight is 2020. There we go. Yeah, again, this is a lot slower than I normally record a voiceover for, so I'm kind of like, so you can see there on the left there, that dark gray doesn't totally match up. So I'm speeding it up here while I just fix that up a little bit. And this again is what I meant by it's a little bit more tedious. So see, I had to pull the gray off and put the gray back on, and now I'm gluing it to the black and then sticking it down, which is what I should have done in the first place. All in all, the lid is done, and this is how the barbecue will look with the lid lifted. And next, I'm going to make some little utensils. So I cut out these tongs using my Cricut. Again, could have cut these out by hand, but I was cutting everything else already, so this just made sense. And I've had questions before. I've used tinfoil to make some silver items. I could have used a vinyl. I definitely could have used a vinyl. I had no silver vinyl, and at the moment I have no use for a silver vinyl. I'm sure I could find something to use it for, but I had none, so I didn't see the purpose in buying a silver vinyl just to make these little tiny little elements. And I didn't just put the tinfoil directly in because the tinfoil rips way too easy. Even using the blue Cricut mats, when I pull it apart, it always seems to tear on me and I never get a nice shape. So I find it easier to cut it out onto a cardstock, glue it onto the tinfoil, and then just quickly cut around it. And I'm just using this tiny little knife, and you could use an X-Acto knife, you could use scissors. Sometimes if it's flimsy enough, you can actually just rip it around the edges, but I went with this little knife. It's a little bit more precise. And again, it doesn't take very long to get done here. There we go. And I was actually going to make a bunch of these. Not a bunch of tongs, but I was going to make a spatula and tongs and a whole bunch of stuff, and I totally forgot that I had intended to do that, so I've just got tongs, but sometimes that's all you need for barbecues, right? If you just got kebabs and hot dogs, that's all you need. So I'm just going to trim these up. Some of the corners looked a little too sharp, like a little too pointy or not quite right. So I'm just fixing those up using my scissors. And again, all of these little elements are totally optional. The barbecue already looks great, if I do say so myself, and you don't necessarily need to add anything else on at all. You could add a sentiment on and a little bit of background, and you're good to go. I do really like having all of the little elements. I've already kind of gone all out doing a folding barbecue card, so I might as well go all out adding everything in. So I'm going to attach the two together. So I'm going to start on one side, and I'm actually just marking here what the height is of this. You don't necessarily need to do this, but, oh, sorry, I'm not sure. I just wanted to make sure I didn't get glue past where the barbecue was, so I didn't make a little tick. Definitely not necessarily. I could have just glued on the back of the barbecue. The big thing you do want to make sure is you don't glue it down past that panel. So you want to only glue that first part and not the second piece. If you glue over that score line, you're going to have a lot more trouble folding it up and having it come apart nicely because you don't want it to stick down to anything else. So I've got one side glued on, and I'm now realizing that I forgot the inside piece. Anyways, again, we're not perfect, but we'll show you how it's done. So this piece basically is just acting as a brace. So when that barbecue top folds down, it's just something for it to kind of sit on so it doesn't sink down or go too far. So I'm going to glue that on. Same way, just using those score marks. And the first side I glued down, lining it up with the bottom of the card, and then I'm going to just fold the card over onto that second piece, press it down nice and tight, and then gently open it up, and it's not stuck down, so try it again, press it a little harder, and open it back up. And there we go. So now we've got a brace, as you can see in the bottom. When that goes down, it sits nicely on top of that. And there it is there. Doesn't need to really be straight, doesn't need to be perfect, doesn't even need to be the same color. All it's doing is holding that down, and nobody's going to see it unless they're actually looking for it. So I'm going to line this back up, get my barbecue straight, match it all up along the bottom, and glue this side down as well. Again, being careful to miss that score mark because we don't have hiccups. Oh my goodness. We don't want it to cross over that score mark. As you can see on the left hand side there, I did get a little bit too close. The barbecue grill top is kind of hitting where the score mark is. I'll have to trim that up just a little bit later, but for now it's okay. There we go. So we've got our barbecue. You don't necessarily need to add a lid on it. I thought the lid looked really nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm pushing the barbecue lid down to where it meets up with that brace. And again, I'm making a little tick. I struggled with what was going to be the easiest way to add this on. I'm thinking now it would have been before I fully glued on the barbecue piece, that front of the Benchfold. But when I was first making it, it was the first run through of actually making the card. Second time cutting it, but first time making it. So I was kind of still learning what I needed to do for assembly. So I'm trying to line it up with those lines, get it straight. Again, this process would have been much easier if I didn't have that barbecue in the way, and you'd actually be able to see it better. So I'm just gonna be finicky here, try and get it in place, make sure it's stuck down, lined up with those lines. And if you do have the brace straight, you could actually just butt it up right against the top of the, or the little pieces of the brace to get it to stick down, but I'm still fussing around with it. The one other thing I will mention is at the bottom corners, you see I've got those 3 layers of cardstock. I've got the light, the dark gray, and the black. That actually just helps to create a little bit of a lip so that grill kind of sticks underneath it, like it kind of sits like a hook so it doesn't go flying up all the time. I'm also realizing there's a little piece of the barbecue that I forgot to attach on. Not that I've looked at my computer drawing or my computer rendering of it, but I'm actually just going to leave it. Now I'm going to put some glue on the barbecue grill top because I've got some items to add onto the grill. So I've got some circles here, and those are representing burgers. I've got 4 burgers on there, turkey burgers, beef burgers, veggie burgers, whatever kind of burgers you want on your grill. I personally really like turkey burgers, so for me, they're turkey burgers. Got those on there. Then I've got this white piece, and I've got a piece of steak here. This piece, tediously, I cut out on the Cricut. Definitely did not need to. And I'm just going to, I started with a white base, and then I added some accents on in like a dark maroon red to be the like fat and meat of this piece of steak. Very cartoonish piece of steak, but the rest of the card is a cartoon anyway, so why not? And when I got done, I found the white was just a little bit too big or thick on some spots, so I did just cut it down a little bit. This is another one of those things that I just want to get perfect before I send out a download to everybody. And I definitely could have just made this part by hand, so I guess these elements aren't so crucial to have in the Cricut design file, but not everybody likes to cut out tiny little fussy little things like this, and having them done already is kind of nice, so I want to be able to include those. So planning out where I'm going to put the stake, adding a little patch of glue stick, and sticking that down. And I'm going to draw on some grill marks on the burgers. Can't talk today. I never seem to be able to speak properly when I'm recording these, but anyways. Putting those down, and again, because this was the first time I was making this card, all of these little elements are kind of afterthoughts, and I kind of think of along the way. Stuff like the grass and the backgrounds and that kind of stuff, I could have definitely added on before. You'll see later when I do the clouds, those might have also been easier to complete before I assembled it, but for the most part, it's stuff that I thought of afterwards. So this grass, I just actually cut out using a pair of those shaped scissors. I was trying to decide whether I wanted to do grass underneath the whole thing or just part of it. Couldn't decide. It would have been nice to do a strip of grass along the whole bottom, but because I've already glued this barbecue down, I can't. So we're just going to do a strip of grass. Again, these are little things that I kind of want to figure out before I create the Cricut file. So one piece of grass with the grass detail along the top glued behind the barbecue would have been much better than what I am doing right now. This is just adding more work for myself, and I don't want to do that to you guys. So I want to get all this stuff figured out and planned out properly, again, before I share a file with you. In the meantime, though, I mean, you've got a rough idea of how this all goes together, and it can definitely be created. So gluing the grass down, again, would have been nice. I could have had a little bit more grass if I hadn't glued all those other pieces down. And again, you see there where that fold is? I wouldn't get that fold mark or that little patch of blue where the fold is had I done one single piece. So it's really just a learning experience, but I just love this card so much, and I was so excited to put it together and film it and show you guys. So I figured you guys would understand. The idea is all the same. And I will have to test it out doing the one sheet. I don't know how it would affect those score marks and how easily it would fold back and forth. Just thought about doing 2 layers of grass, but I don't think I'm going to do it. There's enough detail on the card already. I don't need that much grass. So just sticking some stuff down a little bit better. And I've got some corn, little pieces of yellow cardstock that I'm going to glue down. And I've got some wire. So next I'm going to actually be making some kebabs. I cut some short pieces of wire, curled the ends, and I've got red, yellow, and orange cardstock scraps here. I keep all of my scraps. Really, no scrap is too small for me. And these I'm using up today. They're going to be little cubes of vegetables. Since we've got a lot of meat on the grill already, I'm just going to make some kebabs. So I'm going to glue down this metal kebab piece first using this tacky glue from the Dollar Tree. It comes in a 3-pack, and I actually really like this glue. I think I talked about it before. It dries pretty quickly, and it is pretty sturdy, so I really do like it. Using these tweezers here so I don't get glue all over myself, and just using that excess glue from when I glued down that skewer, that's what it's called, to stick on these vegetables. And they're super cute. It's kind of hard to see in the video right now. I wish I had shown you up close. I think I do at the end, but just get those veggies on there. And getting a little bit more tin foil. And I'm just going to roll this up into sort of the shape of a potato, which is a little bit more difficult than I thought. I thought it would be easier to get a round piece. Maybe I should have put a piece of like toilet paper or tissue paper or something in the middle of it, because I got a lot of like sharp edges where it was just a little bit too jagged to be convincing as a wrapped up potato in tinfoil. But with a little bit of work and some shaping and molding and effort. You can get a potato-shaped piece of tinfoil. Smoothing out those edges and kind of creating a little bit of a crescent shape almost, so it just doesn't look like a ball of tinfoil. There we go. Some perfecting, again, totally not necessary. It does make the card a little bit more dimensional as it sticks up, but as you can see, the card is folded like this. Now, if it's something that's going to be in the mail, it might be a little bit more difficult to add an element such as this on, just because if it gets caught, it'll kind of get knocked around, and it might get to the recipient with a random piece of tinfoil just floating around at the bottom of your envelope, which is not really what you want. So there we go. I should have done another potato, and I don't know why I didn't. I thought I did. Maybe I'm not quite there. Anyways, now I'm going to add some clouds and some little background details and on with that. So I'm going to use this clear embossing ink, and I just kind of like it because it's got a little dauber on top, and I can kind of just dab it where I want it. The dauber is a little bit bigger than I wanted, so I'm going to use the smaller dauber as well to get it a little bit more precise. There again is where that little overlap is that I showed you before, and I will have to cut that off just because there was a little bit of a misgluing when I glued it down. And I also remember now that I forgot the legs of the barbecue. So those I'm going to glue down. I knew there was something, it kind of, for some reason the card looked wrong to me at the bottom up until this point. I could not for the life of me figure out what it was. And it's because the barbecue is just floating in the middle of the air. So we're going to add some legs on there so that it's not floating. And the legs, I'm just going to cut down. Originally I thought I could want to leave them a little bit longer, and then it was, I don't know, for some reason I thought I would leave them longer, but it doesn't make sense because then the card doesn't stand up properly. So anyways, there we go. We've got barbecue legs, and now it's no longer just floating there. Thank goodness. I'm going to stick it down, try to not knock around that potato. I'm trying to keep it flat just until that dries. If I weren't filming a video, I would have actually left it a little bit longer. I'm finding it doesn't stick quite down quite as nicely underneath that lip of the lid, so I'm actually just adding a little dab of this clear glue into the corners so that when you push the grill top down, it'll actually just hook under the little grill top, or the little glue dots. Another option would be to add a little low profile foam dot underneath the lid, and then it would stick under that. I'm going to take a little bit of white paint here. I realized I forgot to mention that in the beginning, but just a little tiny bit. I'm only actually using what is in the cap. And I'm just going to dab off a little bit on some scrap paper here. And with my big head in the way, make some clouds. Again, you can see how I have to kind of prop up the backing there. This would have been so much easier to do before I started assembling everything. But again, I didn't decide to make any clouds until it was all assembled. It kind of felt like it was missing something. So it's one thing to kind of see it on Design Space. You can see the whole card made, but once it's actually made and in front of you, you kind of see spots where there's maybe too much or maybe not enough, and this like vast blue just looked strange to me, so I felt I needed to add some clouds on after the fact. Had I decided earlier, I might have actually just done them and cut them out on the Cricut, but I also do like using this kind of like mixed media type of deal. Get some paint on there, some embossing folders, some wire, some tinfoil, you know, a little bit of everything. I'm just trying to decide whether I want to do another cloud or not, and then I think I'm going to cut it at 3. So I'm going to let that dry and leave it sit. And because I want to put embossing powder over that paint, I needed it perfectly dry. And of course, my camera cut out and didn't film the embossing portion Basically what I did was used a clear embossing ink over top of the white clouds with a little bit of glitter embossing powder to make kind of a shiny cloud. And we've got this gorgeous little barbecue card here where the top folds down. I added on a sentiment since it's for my father-in-law for Father's Day. And got the barbecue there. I added an extra potato on because it looked a little strange with just one potato. I also did a little bit of coloring on the corn to add some kernels on there. I love that this card stands up so it can be displayed, but also folds down to fit into a 5x7 envelope. Be sure to check out my Cricut Design Space tutorial video on how to create the base for this card. And thank you so much for watching and have a great day.